Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and we are back today in our brand new updated studio that we have been very excited to show you guys. We still got some more work coming for it, but we wanted to bring you guys a little better scenery as we capture some of these messages and some of the stories of these incredible, impossible people that we are so honored to have on this show. And today is a very special episode. The woman who's coming on today has battled through situations not just that would seem impossible to most people, but I think would seem impossible to everyone. And her mindset and her mission and her message throughout everything she has battled is a reflection of everything we stand for at Impossible Performance. She has faced life-threatening terminal cancer. She has faced divorce and career loss in the midst of all of it. She has had doctors look her in the eyes and tell her she was not going to make it. Yet here she is, and we are very excited and very honored to bring Micalyn Harris on the show today.
Thanks, Matt.
And you say 100% cancer-free right now, 100%.
Correct?
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm very, very happy about that. And what I didn't tell you was that was the second time that I have been told that. Not only with this diagnosis, but I was told that once when I was 25 as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if we go way back, I had lymphoma when I was 25.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I never knew that about you.
Uh-huh. Sometimes I forget.
Wow. So what kind of lymphoma did you have?
B-Cell. So it wasn't a bad case. It was just a giant tumor, if you will.
Okay.
But overcame that.
And you did like Rituxan therapy for that, basically. And was it just kind of one of those where you did a few months of Rituxan and it was gone?
I had full-on chemo for that.
Okay.
When I had CHOP therapy.
Okay. Well, that's not a light one necessarily.
It was not fun. So that was a long time ago, almost 20 years ago.
Wow. And did Dr. Colley, was she your oncologist then as well?
No, it was Nick Shaw.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Who's still at the cancer center now?
Yeah.
That's wild. So
is
it, I'm sure it's got to be wild for him to like see your whole journey.
Yeah.
You know, from way back then to now.
Yeah.
Because he has just so much experience. He's a great guy. I loved working with him. So take us back, I guess, then all the way to kind of where you grew up, what your early life was like, and kind of how you got to that initial cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, so I grew up here in Parkersburg.
Okay.
Went to Marietta College.
Okay.
I had the most normal childhood ever. You know, like if you talk about a normal family, I was an only child, which explains a lot of I don't share. But, you know, I think from the perspective of childhood trauma, I didn't have that. You know, that is within a lot of people, but my trauma came in my adult life.
Yeah. That's honestly very similar to how my story went. And I always tell people, you know, I grew up like the most normal kid. I had a very loving, very supportive family, and really everything, you know, we had a nice home and nice cars, and, you know, we never really worried about if there was food on the table, you know, and I was very, very blessed, and still am today, to have had that. And even still, you know, with welcoming our daughter into the world, we have a very supportive, like, set of grandparents and everybody around us and close family. But I changed to the core of who I am when I went through cancer. It was like, that's where my trauma, that's where my battle, that's where my challenge in life started. And it's amazing how something like that can awaken an entirely new spirit within you.
That's interesting that you say that, because the first time I went through that, it didn't. And I was almost ashamed of my diagnosis, I was ashamed that I lost my hair. I was ashamed that, I had to stay inside when I didn't feel well. And I went through that treatment, got through it with flying colors, but you will always say that cancer changes who you are and your outlook, but at that time, it didn't. So now I had a second chance to really look at who I am, where I've been, and who I am now.
Yeah. Where do you think that came from? Like the initial cancer diagnosis, where do you think the shame came from?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. I think it was just shameful for not being normal. I worked locally in a lab at the time. So I just don't know. I had a lot of support around me. I had people helping me, my family, my friends, my coworkers. I couldn't ask for more. But it was about almost the pity side of it, like, oh, the head tilt. Oh, look at her. Yeah. So I wore that.
Yeah. I guess there's one point in my life where I could relate to that, and that was when I had cancer, I was a senior in high school, and I had amazing, incredible, like I always say, looking back on that time, I was privileged to get to witness the very best of humanity. And I believe that 100% to today. And, all the kids I went to school with, teachers, family, community members, everybody came out to support. And I could not have been more thankful for that. But then after that, I had to go to college.
Right.
And so now, I had a very near-death experience at the end of my cancer journey, and that rattled me to the core. And I guess when I say change, it wasn't like immediately I was this big, strong, incredible person. Like I was left shattered and broken in so many ways. But I go to college, and there's all these kids I'm with who just graduated high school, traveled for the summer, had the time of their life, they're excited for everything to come. And I realized, well, I don't think I fully realized, some part of me knew that like, I'm not normal. Like I'm not like these people, yet I was trying so desperately to portray that. So I could see where if you grew up in that very normal life and you're surrounded by all these normal people, that there would be a part of you that would want to cling to that.
Yeah.
And want to just kind of like tuck it under a rug and, pretend like it's not there and just move on, move past it.
And I think that was 2005.
Okay.
And therapy really wasn't as common as it is now. So I didn't have a chance to dive in to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's therapy. It's amazing to think even 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, mental health therapy was something that was not talked about. And it's something we talk about pretty heavily on the show now. And I think all of society is getting better at it because I believe it's something that everybody battles to varying degrees. But your mental health is just as important, if not more important than your physical health even, because so much of everything you do in life is derived from your mental health and your mental state and capacity.
They're tied.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And that's what we talked about with a couple of our guests the past few weeks here. We focused a lot on mental health, and, I never went to therapy. I never did anything. There was no transition of care out of like, okay, you battled through this thing that nobody else your age has gone through, essentially, that here's how you reintegrate and find meaning and purpose back in day-to-day life.
Sure.
Did you ever struggle with finding some of that?
Yeah, I did. I don't think at the time that I wasn't old enough, and you can probably relate, to have that drive and that passion at that age. I got married, I was 23.
Really? Okay.
And this happened when I was 25.
Wow.
So you try for that person to be normal, and like I really wanted that. I wanted my life back. Yeah. But what I didn't realize was life isn't what it was.
Yeah.
So now I know.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, it does change things whether you like it or not. And, you know, I spent a period of time where I was really trying to escape all of that.
Right.
And I think that can be a common thing to fall into. Like, things change. Like, you go through intense experiences like that, and things change. And,
yeah,
you know, you can either spend your life trying to run away from it, or you can face it and say, how do I take this challenge and turn it into my advantage and find opportunity within it?
right.
Which is what we really try to help people get to, that side of things. Because if the change is present anyway, you know, you've got two options. You can either run from it, or you can, you know, find the opportunity within it. So one is obviously, at least in our opinion, much more positive than the other.
Right.
You know, we've lived through the escaping period, and it sounds like you went through that pretty heavily yourself.
I did.
What was it like the moment like the very first time you're told you have cancer? And along with that, how did your partner react to that?
It wasn't that moment of, oh my gosh, this is how I'm going to move forward. I looked at it as not having a choice. There were a lot of tears.
Mm-hmm.
You know, oh my gosh, I have this. How do I deal with it? And so I gave myself no option other than to move forward, because I have no idea how.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm going to have this cancer diagnosis, but I'll be fine in a year.
And
So, I don't know. Probably not the healthiest way.
but I think in those moments you have to find a way to move forward somehow. Because I always talk about, like, when I was initially diagnosed, and I think Austin was the same way for a time, you just feel very numb.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you can't even comprehend reality, let alone accept it. So eventually, at some point, you can't, I don't think our psyche can handle staying in that state forever. So at some point, you have to find some path forward. What, in some cases it's more positive, some cases people find a more negative path forward, I think. But at the time, I think it becomes survival.
It becomes survival, but you have to survive in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I put it away. I put it under the rug and thought, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And, but now, you know, I look back and think, that was so unhealthy.
Yeah, it's amazing what that hindsight will show you. So do you think you ever, it sounds like you just wanted to give yourself no options but success, essentially.
Right.
And if you take everything off the table except success, then you'll find a way to get there.
Sure.
And at the time, like, success being a word for basically, like, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to find a way to be cancer free at the end of this.
But I wasn't looking for that way.
Okay.
It was like, well, this is what we're going to do. You have a very curable type, and you're going to be okay. It will be uncomfortable, but it will be okay. And it was. Okay.
So basically your mindset was, I'm just going to get through this. This is going to be a period of my life, and then we're going to lock it away and just never think about it again and get back to normal.
And there was the issue. I locked it away, didn't deal with it, and then was like, oh, I'm fine.
Yep.
Surprise.
Yeah. I think that's a pervading mindset. Definitely, at least in, like, American culture, but I think especially in this kind of area, and, you know, like, more of a, like, small town, rural kind of, like, atmosphere. I think we struggle, and I think it's always getting better, but I know, like, growing up, like, we didn't talk about feelings. We didn't talk about emotions.
Who would?
Yeah.
Who would want that?
Yeah, like, you just work harder and push all that away.
Yeah.
So when you're faced with intense emotion and you've never, like, dealt with that before, you've never had to discuss that or face that, it would be very, very hard to acknowledge it in any way.
Yeah.
Positive or negative, whatever it is, it'd be very hard to acknowledge it. So it's very natural and very easy to just shove it down and pretend it's not there and just pretend like everything's fine.
Who would want to deal with not only cancer, but the emotion of it? Who wants that?
Yeah, because you're already physically destroyed from the chemo. So how are you supposed to process the emotional side
right.
at the same time? It is a lot to take on. And I think, especially at that time, we didn't have the same level of resources that we have today to help fight that other side of the battle,
right.
the mental, emotional, spiritual side that can come from it. So you went through chemo and everything, and was that basically how things went? Like you went through that year or whatever it was, doing the chemo, just kind of pushing everything down, pushing it away, and then you come out the other side cancer free?
Yeah, I did a half a year of chemo and then radiation.
Okay.
So by Christmas, I was fine.
Okay. And what was the moment like when you were first told you were cancer free?
I was like, well, okay.
Yeah. So there wasn't even that, like, that would make sense, I guess, if this whole time you're trying to kind of block this emotional side and push it down, not acknowledge it, push it away. I could see how you wouldn't even have the, like, celebration or the happiness or the intense feelings of joy when you find out it's cured.
It was fear.
Okay.
Because that almost lifelong fear of what if. What if it comes back? Well, and what if it comes back as something else? And I really pushed all of that down.
Yeah. That I'm glad you bring that point up. That's something we've not spent a lot of time talking about. We've only recently kind of jumped on that topic of how do you tackle this, like, fear of what if? Like, how do you live your life on a day-to-day basis, and where do you find the power to move forward in the face of uncertainty?
Well, it's weird that you bring that up, because one of the keys of that is to pretend like life is normal.
Yeah.
But you think, well, isn't that pushing it down? No, it isn't. Part of that mechanism is I am healthy, I am well, I am going to live a normal life, and there is no reason why I can't.
Yeah. I love that. And that's very congruent with what our answer is. So Austin and I have been talking about this a lot on just kind of our solo episodes, because he's been in a weird position recently, the past 6 months or so, where it's kind of this like Schrodinger's cat scenario where we're actually really not sure if he's cancer free or not right now.
Oh,
we're not sure. The oncologists are not sure. And so we dive into this like thought of like, well, how do you move forward? How do you keep living normal life, chasing your goals? How do you do all of that stuff? And really our answer at the end of the day was, well, you create a purpose for yourself that's so strong that you're going to wake up and live that purpose.
Absolutely.
Anyway. You're going to live the life you've chosen. You're going to live what your idea of normal is.
Picture that finish line.
Yeah.
Of saying, well, I am cancer free, and I am well, I am healthy, and I am moving forward.
Yeah.
Not I will move forward when. It is I am at this moment.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what I love the most about that is using the power of the messaging in your brain. That's something we talk about time and time again, and that it's this idea that literally the message you tell yourself about yourself is going to be the truth.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you have the power to shape your own reality, and not even just the power, but the responsibility, because you're going to shape your own reality whether you like it or not.
People don't know that.
Yeah.
And they don't realize it, and they think, well, the doctor at MD Anderson is so smart, and he said that I won't. There is no I won't.
Yeah.
I won't and I can't no longer exist.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the goal where we have to get all of ourselves to. And that's really what we try to live in our day-to-day life, because we chase a lot of athletics, but Austin and I are never going to be the strongest. We're never going to be the fastest. We're never going to be the smartest. We're never going to even be like the most disciplined with training as compared to some other athletes that we compete with, because at the end of the day, like, the athletics is not our core focus, our core purpose in life. Our core purpose and focus is showing people, hey, even amidst all of the challenge you face in life, you can come out and perform in ways that should not be possible.
Right.
And you can apply that mindset to family life. You can apply that to business. You can apply that to athletic training. And so we try to show that from every single avenue.
And some days a win is I got up.
Yeah. That is 100%, 100% true.
Yeah.
And I think you have to allow yourself to accept and celebrate those wins, even when they seem small like that.
Right.
Because you're still moving forward on that path, and you're not allowing yourself to accept that limiting mindset or that feeling of defeat in the midst of some of the harshest realities. But I believe 100% that that message that runs through your brain, what you're telling yourself about yourself, is more important than anything, any part of self-development or health that you could ever chase.
100%.
Because whatever message you build, whatever you make your that default message up to be, and that's programmable, basically, with enough experience and practice. I'm sure you know this. I can't wait to dive into more of this side on the later part of your journey. You can change that message. Like, if you're by default now a very negative person, you're saying like, oh, I'm not capable of that. I couldn't do that. Other people can do that, but that's not available to me. Like, if you keep telling yourself that, that's what's going to happen.
Yes. And people don't know that they have to become comfortable being very, very uncomfortable, and that is across the grid. So at work, in life, in health, oh, this has been so uncomfortable, but oh well.
And you just get used to it. It becomes the new normal. And I think it's just a skill that you have to build, and that's attainable to everyone. That's why we put such a focus on, for us, you know, we find that through athletics now. Like, we have our own challenges, obviously, that we're facing in day-to-day life. But like, what do you do if you're just like you said, for most of your life, and for most of my life before cancer, it was like just a very normal person. I didn't have a lot of like true uncomfortable.
Right.
I think that everybody, so I always tell people this, I say pain is relative. Like, we've all only experienced the worst thing we've ever experienced. So if, you know, the worst thing you've ever, say you're a high schooler and the worst thing you've ever experienced was a bad breakup, that's still the most pain you've ever felt in your life. So like, it's relative. Like, that's still a 10 out of 10 to you. So you can use that situation to build strength from it. But we love like athletics and training. And it doesn't have to be that. It could be anything. It could be study. It could be a chosen philosophical discipline. You know, it could be anything. But you've got to find some level of struggle and challenge in your life that you voluntarily put yourself through on a day-to-day basis, because that's going to build up that resilience. And that's why we still chase it today, is because we have these challenges in life that we didn't choose, that we can certainly build resilience through those, but we put this other voluntary side on top of it, because that's just going to even facilitate that development further. And then when we get to the situations in life where we didn't choose this, we're already a little more well equipped to manage it.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So going back to you battle through this first cancer diagnosis, B-Cell Lymphoma, which is not like, I mean, no cancer diagnosis is minor, but B-Cell Lymphoma is not a minor diagnosis. That was an intense treatment you went through.
It was.
Did life go back to normal after that? Were you trying to kind of force it to go back to normal? Or, you know, was it just kind of seamless? You were able to just kind of brush it under the table and just move on as if it didn't happen?
I I put my head in the sand and said, I'm fine. And I do that now, by the way. But it was worse when I was that young, newly married. And they really, well, here you go. Yeah. And so picked myself up and thought, well, I'm going to focus on my career. After that, I really wanted to become a drug rep.
Okay.
I really wanted that. And I did. Loved it. My favorite job ever. And then,
what drew you to that, just out of curiosity?
I worked in a doctor's office.
Okay.
In college. And I loved what they did. Yeah. I was like, how cool is it that?
Yeah, you just get to, travel. You get to do lots of travel. You get to meet new people all the time. If you're a very, social people kind of person, I could definitely see there being a draw to that.
I was not very social back then. Mm-hmm. I remember my first training job when I was out of school, if you will. They were like, you have a choice. You can either be quiet and fail, or you can learn to be a human being and be successful. So I was like, okay, I will try and be less of a robot and more a person.
So you kind of learned some social people skills through that job then.
I prefer to be a hermit.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to be, because at the end of the day, you're not just representing that drug, you're kind of a salesman, and salesman doesn't have to be a negative, bad term. Certainly there are crooked, bad salesmen out there trying to take advantage of people, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can be a very positive, motivating, uplifting thing. If you know that your product is going to help people, and you know that your product is the best thing available, then there's some guys out there that would say, well, then it's almost your responsibility to sell it in order to help people. And
I feel like that really kind of sparks my interest in pharma and in that life science avenue. And because I thought what we did was really cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go around, tell people about the great drug I have, and then I'm gonna go home at the end of the day and be a normal person. Yeah. And for about a couple of years, I was.
Yeah. And do you feel that you were truly, genuinely happy during this time period?
Yeah, I thought so. I really felt that way.
Yeah. And even looking back, do you think you were pretty happy? Because what it sounds like to me is, it sounds like you had a great deal of purpose in your life at that point.
But was I truly happy? Probably not.
Okay.
Purpose, sure. Struggles, absolutely. But I thought that was normal.
Okay.
You become so conditioned that it becomes normal.
Yeah. It's so funny how life just lines up in these crazy ways. I was literally thinking about this all morning. So we were at the gym. I'm doing a very weird powerlifting program right now that nobody would ever think would make sense. People would say it's the dumbest thing ever, but it's because I'm training for a marathon and I have a newborn and we're running a business at the same time. And fortunately, I have a very good coach who's just like, yeah, man, let's do crazy. Let's do things that nobody would ever do. But this morning, I'm squatting. Very first set, I've got 325 pounds on my back, and I'm doing 4 reps, which anytime I'm doing high volume like that, which for me, that was high volume given what level of weight it was, that's when I really start struggling. My form starts breaking down, my prosthetic gets uneasy, different things like that. I actually get way too deep on the last rep, and I try to explode up out of it, and I end up flying forward with this weight. And the bar hits the rack, throws me off balance, and I very nearly went face forward on the ground with 300 pounds on my back. And fortunately, I train at it's the best gym in the world. And I'm not even going to say my opinion. Like, that's just how I feel with some of the very best people in the world. And they were immediately on me, probably 6 guys immediately on me, grabbed that weight, lifted it right up off me and re-racked it. And I just thought, I do this every week. And sometimes when I'm deep in a powerlifting season, I do this every day. Like, I get underweight that could kill me. And I thought, well, like, why do I do that? Because that doesn't seem very smart when you put it on the face of it. But what I came back to is I was like, I'm conditioned to survive.
Right.
And not just that, but to thrive under the worst of conditions.
And you said something really important. You said it feels a little bit crazy. Yeah. And they said, well, we're going to do something a little bit crazy. Yeah. And let me tell you, you have to be, whether in business or in life or in health, you have to be a little bit off the wall.
Yeah, that's something we've been saying a lot, is we say you have to have an unruly faith in your own potential.
Yeah.
Like, you have to.
I love that expression.
Yeah, you have to dream of things that, like, should not be possible. Mm-hmm. And the level of satisfaction and meaning you find and purpose you find in chasing something like that. I've never found anything more fulfilling, personally.
I think once, and people like you especially, once that switch is on, mm-hmm. it won't turn off.
No. And that's what we say. And this is why we work so heavily with kids who are battling cancer. Once you see that potential in yourself, you see it in everyone and everything around you. We, we've had so many fortunate opportunities, but there was a time in this past April, where we got to go to Pittsburgh and run Pittsburgh Marathon as like a relay team, like 5 people split up a marathon distance. And so we brought some of our guys up, and we got to meet 2 people, Natalie and Leo. Natalie was on this podcast. Leo battled leukemia when he was 5 till he was 8. He's 13 now, so he's just now 5 years in remission and is considered cancer-free. But Pittsburgh's where he battled cancer. So we got to go back there and run the marathon with him and his mom.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we kind of cheated the system a little bit so they could run the last leg together. But we made it work. And they ran the last leg together, except he was originally going to stay with his mom. And then, like, he got the thing we had that we were passing off, and he took off. And he just, like, awesome. Dusted her, which I think she loved, and I think he loved. And he took off and he finished that race. But what was amazing is at the end of it, when I saw him cross that finish line, and I saw him, like, realize what he just did. He just came back and finished a marathon in the same city he battled cancer, and, like, the hospital's literally in view. And it's like, I saw that light come on.
That's awesome.
And it's like, I got, like, goosebumps right now just thinking about it. There is almost no more rewarding feeling than seeing that in someone else.
Oh, 100%.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So when did you're living this kind of, like, quote unquote normal life, you think that you're very happy. Was there any challenge that you recognized during that time period? And if there was, did you, like, face it, or was that something else you just kind of tried to keep under wraps?
That was definitely something that I kept under wraps.
Okay.
I felt like the daily struggle of this old diagnosis following me around for no reason whatsoever. Yeah. Like, give you an example. Years later, I was running a hill.
Okay.
And someone was like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And I'm wheezing and all of that. And because I had lymphoma in my chest, then it affected my breathing. And I'm like, "I'm not fine." I'm, like, crying, but I couldn't tell them why. Yeah. And it was the dumbest thing ever. Like, why would I let that affect me now?
Yeah. It was probably some of that trauma, like you were
Oh,
shoving
yeah.
down, it was resurfacing a little
That
bit.
trauma was like, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
I am here and live.
I'm still here.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, man. So, did you have anybody that you could, like, talk to about this at all?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I had childhood friends who grew up in the same neighborhood. And she was and is an amazing support system because she had lymphoma about a year before I did.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. So we don't know whether it was an environmental issue. It seems like there were a lot of people in that neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty scary to think about because the cancer I had is like a 1 in a million diagnosis, I guess, as far as kids in the U.S. And when I had it, there were 3 other kids in this area that had that same type of cancer.
No, that's weird.
And we don't have 1 million people that live here, like not even half that. So I think, there definitely can be and is. I mean, I think gets worse every day. The amount of environmental, just some of it's toxins, but some of it's just stuff that like is not supposed to exist in nature,
right?
That we're all exposed to. They say we all eat like a pound of plastic a year just from secondary exposure to everything we're exposed to.
It is all of that combined. Mm-hmm. And you have to rid your system of that. And plus, you add all the emotional toxicity on top of that.
Oh, yeah.
You have to become the best version of yourself.
I agree 100% with that. I like how you talk. I like that phrase you used, emotional toxicity, because that goes back to what we were talking about, that like messaging in your brain. If you keep telling yourself like, and this is something I've had to work really hard on here recently, because I've been, quote unquote, dealing with some unknown sickness for 4 years now that's really impacting my health and my performance. Mm-hmm. But I've gotten myself to a point where I keep running that message through my head. And so I've been on the drive to work in the morning, I've been working on kind of undoing some of that messaging and trying to tell myself like, no, you're healthy, you can perform,
you're healthy,
like look at what you're doing, because I don't want to let myself fall into this cycle of, oh, I'm sick, I'm broken, I'm because your body will respond in kind to that message. And I'm not going to say that like that message alone will just cure any disease and make you 100% healthy, but it will push you much, much, much farther in that direction if you have that kind of message. It can become the foundation on which all of the external therapies you're using, it'll just magnify the response you have to them. Right. That's what I believe about it. So, going back to what we were talking about, the emotional toxicity, do you think you were still like carrying all of that? Oh, even still,
I had that on my back.
Yeah.
Like, I was sick.
Yeah.
It could come back.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful support system in that, but I wore it.
Yeah.
But as you know, there's always, I look at where I am now and what I went through and said, okay, I had the opportunity to heal. And I mean really, really heal. And it was and is uncomfortable. The healing process is not fun.
Yeah.
But whether it's physical or emotional, you have to.
Yeah. You have to, because the only other option is death.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even mean like physical death. It could be death of your spirit. It could be death of your mind. Like, the only other option is giving up and giving in. And that just leads literally to nothing.
Zero.
And nothing is the ultimate, like, that's the worst thing. It's worse than even like physical death. Because we talked about this with Emma, the 16-year-old who came on and talked to us about like mental health and suicide and self-harm. Just unbelievable mental and spiritual maturity for someone, not even just for someone who's 16, for anybody in general, but especially for somebody at her age. And she talks about how like a lot of depression was feeling nothing. And it's like, it's not sadness. Sadness is something at least, but for her, depression was nothing. And that's like the worst times in my life was when I felt nothing and I had no direction, no purpose, nothing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you had somebody you could at least talk to and like kind of unload some of this baggage on, which I think is very important, because that's something I still struggle with to this day. Maybe one of the things I struggle the most with is like talking to people and confiding in people, because when I battled through cancer, I very much put on this air of like, oh, like everything's great, like I'm going to crush this.
Yeah.
And I still am bad about that today. We've been trying to change that a little bit in some of our content, but I'm still bad about that today, even in like actually telling people and explaining to people and opening up about like what I feel.
Oh, feelings are
they're the worst.
Ew. But I feel like, you know, if you have that opportunity to really heal yourself, your body and your spirit and your mind and all of it, take it.
Yeah. Oh,
because that is your one shot.
I love that. So was this like kind of a turning point then when you were running these hills and like you tell yourself you're not feeling it? Was that the point where you started chasing healing, or did that come later?
Oh, no.
Okay.
You're
not ready for that yet.
No, I let that go until this most recent diagnosis.
Okay. So that was more of the turning point then.
Mm-hmm.
So you were 25, correct, at the first diagnosis?
Right.
And then you kind of live this quote unquote normal life that you've built for yourself.
Yep.
Did you do that for like the next 15 years or so till your next, when was your next cancer diagnosis?
I was 39.
Okay.
And for those of you who can't, who are audio only, if you hear something chewing, it is Archie, Matt's dog.
Yeah.
Licking his lips, it's not me.
Oh gosh. Yeah, hopefully people are used to the podcast pups now.
But I love it. We're
sometimes they cause, at least his collar's off. We're not hearing the jangling this time, but hopefully everybody's used to it by now.
But that chewing noise, we're bubs. But anyway, I think that the second time around, I was 39. That was in January. Well, I felt like a cut on my tongue.
Okay.
Since September.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh, it's my Invisalign retainer. And so I have a cut.
Yeah.
And of course, I did nothing. And went to the doctor back before that in probably September, October. And he said, oh no, it's fine. The story of my life is, oh no, Micalyn, you're fine.
You're fine.
But what I didn't know was then the side of my tongue got worse and worse and worse and eventually split open. That is when I really went back to the doctor. And they were like, oh, that doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Let's biopsy that. So I told my husband, and we had been through this before, the whole biopsy. And I said, you know, they want to biopsy it, but I'm sure it's fine. Well, it was not fine.
Yeah.
And so on Tuesday, I went to the oral surgeon, and I guess pathology had called them and said, hey, you have a big problem. And so he said, well, you have cancer in your tongue. And I was like, what? I'm not a smoker.
Yeah.
I socially drink, but they say most men who are like 50 and over would have that. Mm-hmm. So I don't have that. Why did this happen? So we'll talk about that, but that is something that I chased this whole time.
Yeah. So take us to that moment. this thing you're living in constant subconscious fear of.
Right.
This, what if it comes back?
Oh, it did.
What was the moment sitting in that doctor's office? How did that feel when you're hearing this doctor tell you you have cancer again?
I was numb. Every emotion that I did not experience before, all of that came bubbling out, and it was my worst fear. Yeah. And nonetheless, it was my tongue.
Yeah.
Who has that?
Yeah. And that's like the most unlikely, like that almost makes it worse, because if it had been like, oh, your lymphoma's back, at least you would have had some comprehension of that reality.
Right.
You know what that world looks like. This is cancer on your tongue, something you'd probably never heard about before at that time period. And most people have never heard about. Right. And then you get a pretty crushing prognosis with that.
So this was during COVID.
Oh, gosh. So was this 2020 then?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
During COVID.
Oh, just to make it even.
The universe was like, try me.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was Tuesday.
Okay.
By Friday.
And this was January of 2020?
It was actually March.
March by this point. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so when COVID is just like the world could maybe end, is what people were saying at this point.
The world was on fire, and I had this awesome tumor in my tongue. So on Friday, I went to OSU, and they said, how fast are you available? And I said, no. Yeah. And they said, okay, and they had me scheduled by Tuesday of the following week. Wow. So there was no time to process all of that, nothing.
Yeah. And that's like, that's not only is that like, in today's day and age in the medical system, you don't reschedule, like you don't schedule that quickly, like it's usually months out. And then you throw the fact that it was COVID on top of it, like everything got thrown out the window. Then that just shows the harsh severity of what this diagnosis was. Yeah.
I was the first trach patient allowed back at OSU.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So you had a trach during this time?
Oh, yeah.
During COVID.
During COVID.
And people who have, so for the listeners who don't know, like a tracheotomy is essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, they open up a little hole in your throat directly into your esophagus, and they can connect you to a ventilator through that. Right. You can breathe through that. Were you connected to a ventilator, or were you just kind of breathing on your own through that hole?
I'm not sure what they call it, but
okay.
I don't know whether it was a vent. I could get up and move.
Okay, so some type of breathing assist apparatus, like a BiPAP or a CPAP, maybe.
It was a bypass because I was in a swell.
Yeah.
Bad.
Wow. So give us first, like, the plan the doctors gave you, because I know they told you you were not expected to live very long.
No, I was going to be okay.
Oh, you were going to be okay at this point. I see.
I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, they were going to do some surgery. It was going to go away. You were going to be okay.
I was going to have radiation.
Okay.
I had a full neck dissection because we wanted to make sure it wasn't in my lymph.
Okay.
And it never has been, which is real weird.
Yeah, because you had lymphoma previously. Right. So you had cancer. So this wasn't like a recurrent.
No.
A recurrence of the lymphoma. Not at all. There's only one other person I've heard of in my entire life, and she's one of our biggest heroes on this podcast, Ginger McConnell. I don't know if you ever met her or not.
I haven't.
But she's the only other person I've heard of that's had multiple totally separate cancer diagnoses.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And so what I thought was, I had the best surgeon at OSU, and that team, incredible. Mm-hmm. And I could not ask for more. Yeah. But I was fine.
Okay.
And we're going to go through surgery and then radiation it wasn't in my lymph. You're going to be okay.
So what surgery was it they were? I know that you said they put you on a tracheotomy to protect your breathing, but like what all did the surgery entail?
So I am very cool because I have 2 major ones.
Okay.
They took out half of my tongue, rebuilt the floor of my mouth, and I have a hell of a lisp because of it. But, you know, and if I wake up and I have talked a lot, then I'm hoarse because I've talked all week long.
And they were probably telling you not to do that?
This week?
Or no, were they telling you to not talk a lot after surgery?
Oh, no, I couldn't.
Oh, you couldn't for a while.
But, like, now.
Okay, now you do.
Lingering effects of it.
Yeah.
But, so they had to rebuild my tongue with my arm. So
with like soft tissue from your arm or like muscle?
Yeah.
That's
so I have
unbelievable.
An arm tongue. Some people have a leg tongue.
Okay.
But the ones that OSU does, I ended up with an arm tongue.
Okay.
And then, but my leg is on my arm, and my arm is in my mouth.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that wild?
That's why. You know what I love the most about everything you just said there? You opened up that whole explanation with, I'm very cool.
And you know why? It was because I had this, I was running a company at the time. And so I always struggled with how to approach a new employee with that. Because I'm like, what do I tell them? I don't want to scare them. And I had about 40 to 50 people in the company. And I was like, I'm just going to tell them, hey, you know, I want to tell you, don't be afraid of asking me what. Just say what. I make jokes about it. I love my lisp. But at the same time, here's what happened. And I don't want them to be afraid of it.
Yeah. You show them that you've like taken ownership and power over the situation.
Yes. And it was an employee who a new employee who did not blink one eye. And she said, science is so cool. And I wore that. I love that.
That's amazing. And guys, this is literally an exact example of what we were talking about with the messaging. You've changed the messaging in your brain. You've changed your default programming to be, this is so cool about me. Rather than this being a thing that limits you or holds you back or something that's negative or tearing you down or something you're ashamed of, you've flipped the script on that 100% to say, this is so cool. And you like by default even opened up with that. And that's so cool.
You have to.
Because it's given you this position of empowerment.
But look at what they were able to do.
Yeah.
They rebuilt. So I have a scar from, for those of you who can't see, I have a scar from my elbow to my wrist. And then they took a vein out of my arm and tissue and rebuilt my tongue and the floor of my mouth.
That's so
Isn't that
cool.
wild?
Yeah. It's amazing what, and even that is a reflection of like the impossible. Like somebody at some point, who knows when, had the idea, you know what, for people who have to have their whole or part of their tongue removed, I bet we could take muscle out of other parts of their body and veins and nerves out of other parts of their body and rebuild it in their mouth.
Someone like, thought, yeah, that'll work.
Like that's so like impossible in and of itself. And the fact that like now they're doing it, you know, it is just amazing. But the fact that you've been able to make this your default mindset about it, that's going to give you, by tearing down all those, because so many people could look at that situation and say, oh, poor me, like this is awful.
Oh, I
like,
did.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
Like, I had moments of, I don't remember the hospitals say.
Mm-hmm.
There are parts of the last 4 years that I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I went down that hole of, oh, poor me.
Okay.
Look at what I have to do.
So even at this point of the second cancer diet, you have not switched your mindset. You've not switched gears at this point.
Oh, no,
yet.
I did, but I think it is normal
Okay.
to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And it's healthy.
Yeah.
But you have to pull yourself back.
Okay. I agree 100%. You have to, we try to say that all the time. You have to let yourself,
Right.
emotions aren't negative. Emotions are good. Nothing, when you feel nothing, that's when it's
bad.
negative and scary. But you're right. You have the sadness, the pain, the anger, the frustration, whatever it is. You've got to let yourself feel that, and
Right.
you've got to let yourself feel that at the highest level that your body has it, and then because that's the only way to let go of it.
Right. And sometimes you have a trauma response of blacking that out.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was at OSU, my husband at the time was there overnight. He didn't stay, but like day of surgery and then next day. And then he was gone. He had to go.
Okay.
So I was in ICU by myself and I couldn't talk. And I could only use one arm for 8 days.
Wow.
And that sucked.
Yeah.
And if anyone has to do that or had to, my heart goes out. But, you block it out. You don't remember.
Yeah. Wow.
But you have to do it.
That's an unbelievable situation to be in. I can't fully relate, but when I came off of ECMO, I was like in and out of very vivid hallucinations, and I'd been on paralytics for 2 weeks, so my whole body atrophied. Like when I started coming out of this coma, the main thing I remember, I saw my mom and dad there. It was the first time I'd had any kind of like coherence of reality. And I still struggled a long time with like what's real, what's not. But I remember my mom and dad there, and they were like freaking out, so excited. I had no idea what was going on, but I just remembered like they're showing me all these cards and the stuff for people got for me, and I'm like,
what?
Why? But I just remember my nose was itching really, really bad, because I'm sure when you come off of anesthesia and paralytics and all those kind of drugs, it can give your body some weird sensations. One that I always get when I come off of anesthesia is I get a really itchy nose. Mm-hmm. Don't know why, that's just something I always get.
Yeah, I got a cough.
You get a cough, yeah. So like,
I don't want to.
Oh, you're fine. Go for it.
We'll cut that part out.
No, you're all good. I mean, even that is like, the reality that you still face today.
Mm-hmm.
But I just remember like my nose itched so bad, and I wanted to scratch it, but I was not physically strong enough to like lift my own arm to scratch my nose. And, I was in the ICU at that time, and I was fortunate enough to have my parents were there 100% of the time, at least one of them. I was never alone. That point in my life when I'm like, and the physical therapy team came in later, and all I wanted to do was sit up. They wouldn't even let me sit up. Like literally that day was like, we're going to massage your muscles a little bit. Like that's what I was allowed to do. And I just remember being in tears. Like all I wanted to do was sit up. And that that period in the ICU there. And then I got out and had to go back in. That was like some of the darkest periods of my life, but I had somebody with me there the whole time. I cannot imagine having to sit there alone. Oh,
there is alone. And then there is the depth and darkness of alone.
Yeah, and there's nothing.
Yeah, and I think I flushed it out. I was like, you don't have to have that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. So I guess you may or may not remember this, but like, what did it feel like? Do you have any? You don't have any recollection?
I have no clue.
Wow. It's amazing how the body and the mind can use that as a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things you kind of, it happened, but
Right.
you don't have much memory of it.
I felt no pain. I felt nothing. Of course, some of that was probably some really fun painkillers.
Yeah.
But
They've got some powerful ones.
yeah.
And especially, well, I guess so this was 2020. By that point, we're not in like the height of the opioid epidemic.
Oh, no, we were.
Oh, okay. Were we
yeah.
still struggling with that? Okay.
Yeah, but you have to.
Yeah, 100%. So did everything just kind of progress how they expected it to? Were you able to just, regain function and come back and get out of the ICU and move on from there?
Yeah. I went home, and I knew that, I had one of those MG tubes.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I hate those things.
Yeah. I went back for my follow-up and was like, this has to go.
Yeah.
This tube is going. But, I got through it as expected, moving on. And I was okay.
Okay.
Sure. Uncomfortable? Yeah. But I was okay.
Yeah. And so at this point, do you still have your trach at this point?
No.
Or that was gone before you left the hospital?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And were they expecting you to be cancer-free at this point, or did you say you still had some radiation to do?
I had to do radiation.
Okay.
Lymph node-wise, they were clear.
Good.
So I was trucking along. Yeah, I'm good.
So you were just expecting, were you kind of in the mindset that you were when you battled cancer the first time, that you're like, I'm just going to get through this and we're going to go back to normal?
100%.
And when did that start to change?
When I went back for my first surveillance scan in September of 20.
Okay. So you did radiation in the meantime? Okay. So walk us through really quick what the radiation process is like, because that's something that, as much of the things that we've battled through and have experience in, neither of us have ever done radiation. So we don't know what that world is like.
I've done that a lot.
Okay.
I feel like I glow.
Again, positive messaging in an unfortunate situation. I love it.
Really was not fun.
Yeah.
At all.
I've worked with some head and neck. There are some people who had head and neck cancer that had to go through radiation on like their throat.
Yeah.
And it is some of the worst things I've ever had to witness people battle through.
It was, I got through it.
Yeah.
Without, a lot of people have a feeding tube, a peg.
Okay.
Tube. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't want one. But let me tell you, that was no joke.
Yeah. I hear it's like some of the worst. So I got like really bad mouth sores from the chemo, and like I still have scars from some of that, and it would get to the point like I couldn't eat or drink. But like what I've seen some people go through from like the radiation perspective with that is like a whole new level. It
was. I'm not going to sugarcoat that at all. And they'll tell you, you'll get through it, you'll be okay. Yeah, you will. But it was not fun.
Yeah, it doesn't change the fact that you're still suffering on a day-to-day basis. And what I think is the worst part about chemo, radiation, whatever it is, you get sicker and more beaten down and more broken like every day. At least that's what I felt like when I was battling through it.
Yeah.
And that just becomes your new normal. And it's like, well, how do you recover from that mentally and emotionally? How do you keep going on in spite of that?
You imagine yourself well. And I didn't come up with this on my own. I was taught that by an amazing practitioner. But imagine yourself what you want.
That's amazing. Doing that, like, what do they call it? I think what I've heard that referred to as before is like, is it like limbic healing or something like that? But like basically retraining your limbic system, which is some sort of mind-body connection system in your brain, to basically recondition that connection.
It is a really creepy way to say meditate on what you want.
Okay.
And I don't know whether that is scientific. I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, it is there 100%. Like I've that's in that at the end of the day, that's everything that we come back to when we say like be impossible. So I think a lot of people see what we do and hear our messaging, and sometimes they think like we're all about doing the impossible, and that's not actually true. Like we're all about the being impossible, because you're not going to control what the outcome is. You can put in what you feel like is all of the work, and at the end of the day, it may not still happen, but you can control the being impossible. You can control that mind body. You can control how you show up every day. If you're putting in the work, you can control the journey. And at the end of the day, that's the part that matters. That's the part you grow from. So were you doing that at this time while you're going through radiation, or is this something you learned later?
I learned that in January of, I just finished radiation.
Okay.
And started working with a holistic practitioner.
And what drew you to that world of medicine?
A friend.
Okay.
A group of friends were kind of involved in that world. And I was like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Because, I mean, when you're battling something like cancer, and especially if you've got an uncertain prognosis, I think it makes sense to look at every available option.
Even without that uncertainty, it makes 100% sense.
Yeah. Because if you can find any way to assist your healing and find means and strategies or therapies or whatever they are to facilitate that healing process,
yeah,
it's worth exploring, because this is your life. I think that's something that gets, I can say this because I've worked in oncology I worked in it for like 8 years in different aspects, both as a student and as a practitioner. We get so hung up in this like checklist and this like box of, this is how we do things. Protocol. This is the way. We know all the answers. Like, yet we know that we don't know all the answers. We know that there's cancers we don't know how to cure. We're constantly finding out new and improved ways or better therapies, all these things. But I think we get into this box and not realizing, like, our goal becomes killing the cancer sometimes more than it does healing the person. And
yes.
That is, I think it happens because of the volume that people experience on the medical side. And this isn't like tearing down the medical side at all, because they're some of the best people I've ever known that work in that side. And
they have to work together.
Exactly. But I think so much, this is your life. You get one shot at this. You are all in on this game.
Yep.
Whether you like it or not, by default, this is everything.
You have, and people should say that statement and view it not only for a medical condition, but for their whole life.
Everything.
Yeah. And it was about, I was working with this practitioner. I was kind of into the healing process, but it was from both the physical and the spiritual side. I already had integrated whole health, supplements, nutrition, all of it. But then in 21, it moved to my lung.
Okay.
It stripped my whole lymph and went to my lung.
How did it do that? Do they have any idea?
We're getting there.
Okay. All right. I'm getting too anxious. Too excited.
Medical side, no. They have no clue.
Okay.
But we got on that path of, okay, you have an issue in your bone. You have an issue in your lung. And now, but I never had a recurrence in my mouth, ever.
Okay.
So radiation works.
Yeah.
But overall, they're like, why did that happen? No one knew. And so I went through immunotherapy alone for a while.
Okay.
And then in August of 21, right about this time of year, the wheels fell off everything. I didn't tell a lot of my family. I didn't tell people that I worked with because I didn't want them to be afraid. And I was like, I have got to go through this not alone, but on my own. With a lot of help from friends, from family. The support system that I had was unbelievable.
Yeah. So this is, I like kind of what you said there. You say, I'm not going to go through this alone, but I've got to do this on my own. Like, it sounds like maybe that's some of the first time where you were able to say, like, look at yourself in the proverbial mirror and say, hey, this is our reality. This is what we're going to face. And I'm going to accept this responsibility of healing and getting through this.
It was an opportunity to heal.
Oh, I love that.
From the inside out. And because of that, I am not the same.
That's amazing. So was it what got you to this? So was this the when you had the recurrence in the lung?
Yeah.
Okay, that kind of really triggered. You've been working through some of the more holistic side of medicine,
right?
And you're trying to support health and wellness and start building that up, and then you get a lung diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that's when
it came up.
It really kind of started
lung,
flipping.
And then it spread. It was in my muscle. It was in my bone. I have so many scars because of that. Like, you'd be like, why do you have that? Like, I have a scar on my shin. I had like a nodule in my shin. So it was some sort of tissue invasion. And no one knew why. But I was like, all right, this is go time.
Yeah.
Well, this is bad. She'll didn't tell a lot of the people that I worked with. And that was for their own protection, really. Yeah. I didn't want them to feel afraid. But bad idea.
Yeah. Well, and I think, okay, so you thought that was the way. Like, I'm just going to kind of keep this under wraps. I'm going to kind of fight through this myself. Right. And ultimately that didn't work out. Do you think that came from a place, because I could see how you could almost have, with what you were realizing at this point, you could almost have the mindset of like, this is going to be okay. I'm going to fight through this. I'm not going to tell a lot of these people around me because I don't want them putting the message on me that I'm not okay.
Right, yes.
Was that where that was coming from?
That. Yeah. Because I knew that I would be okay. Mm-hmm. Through this whole process, there has never been one point in time where I was like, I'm not okay. Yeah. I have always been of the mindset, I'm okay.
Yeah. And the amount of strength that has to keep building that message in yourself despite, everything going on around, like, that's a huge amount of strength it takes to do that. And I could actually see, like, it makes perfect sense in my brain, like how your brain could, how you could say like, oh, I don't want that negative message put on me because some of the people in my life may not understand the healing journey I'm on.
They don't. And I had people very close to me who knew, close to me at work who knew, close to me in my personal life who knew. But overall, the majority of people didn't know. Wow. That I was going to weekly chemo treatment.
Yeah, because I remember, like, you would show up every week. Uh-huh. You'd be on your laptop, like, working away.
Most of the time, I would say there were very few times that I didn't work. So I was always available, just not on the phone because there was a bunch of beeping in the background.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but I never felt bad because of all of the natural healing I was doing in the background.
Wow.
What people don't realize is natural healthcare has a stigma around it.
Mm-hmm.
Say that word for me.
Stigma. Yeah.
But they think it is one or the other, and there's a witch doctor behind it, and you're gonna mess yourself up. No, there are some like that, absolutely, but the route I went with was proven by the guy who wrote the book.
Yeah.
On natural oncology.
Wow.
And every time I would come up with the new trick I have, I have some very supportive people at the center where I am now, but there were always the ones that would say, you don't want to do that. You're going to hurt yourself. No. What do I have to lose? Nothing.
Yeah. And it's like on the other side of it too, you're going to hurt yourself doing chemo and radiation.
Right.
Like it's not like that is a silver bullet that comes with no side effects and no repercussions and nothing in and of itself. You know, we certainly have a lot of studies and data and all that kind of stuff behind it. But I mean, it's like, it's not like that's a no risk option either.
Right. And how many times have I heard, I've been doing vitamin therapy for a very long time, mm-hmm. high level mm-hmm. doses. And they've said, well, it hasn't been FDA approved. Sure, you're right. But there are so many independent studies on that in journals in that natural health world who will say, yeah, this is great. Yeah. And it'll work.
Yeah. So, wow. Okay. I'm very excited to dive into a lot of this because we kind of nerd out and geek out about this, like Austin and I do, you know,
for a while.
Because when you're put in a position where your health is truly compromised, like if that's ever something you've had to face in life, like, you know what it's like to, it can be a pretty helpless feeling.
Right.
For a time, and especially if you allow it to be. And especially, you know, if you've worked through the mainstream medical perspective and for years feel like you're not really getting anywhere, you know, for anybody who's ever battled that. So, you know, you're always kind of looking for, well, what can I do to take some control and some power of the situation? What can I find that helps me? And if it helps you be a healthier person and live day-to-day life feeling more fulfilled and more empowered with a higher level of health, I mean, it's hard to say that that's a negative thing.
It's not. The only negative that I would come up with that is when people are going completely off the grid mm-hmm. in therapies that are known to harm them, mm-hmm. or in therapies that are counteractive to their chemotherapy.
Okay.
So, no, it isn't FDA approved. Vitamin therapy is a league of its own. Alternative healthcare is a league of its own. But if you get with the right practitioner who has that knowledge and who can help you through that, then it only supports it.
That's amazing. So, wow, there's so much to unpack here. You brought up that there is a very negative stigma, and it is very much there. In some ways, I think it's getting better. In some ways, I think it's getting worse.
Right.
Around this like natural approach to healthcare.
Right.
And I've always wondered, like, where does this come from? Because natural medicine, I mean, depending on what your beliefs are, natural medicine was medicine. Like, that is where modern medicine came from. You know, and that was our medicine for thousands and thousands and thousands, like since the dawn of time, basically. So why do we have to have this or that kind of mindset around it? We don't. And I think you're a perfect advocate of that.
You shouldn't have to choose.
Yeah.
My overall wish is to, and I work with them now, but finding practitioners who are supportive of that of the chemotherapy approach. A lot of people will say it is my way or modern medicine. No. If you're comfortable with that, okay. But my preference is to work with someone who is not only board certified, but in like an MD, Doctor of Naturopathy, along those realms.
Yeah.
And within that, there are so many specialty subgroups who can support the body.
100%. And I think, I mean, it's the more you go through life, the more you realize there's a balance to so many things.
Right.
And what we say is, the balance isn't always 50-50 necessarily. The balance can be 60-40. It can be whatever it is. But you've got to find in every walk of life, whether it's athletics, business, whatever it is, there always has to be a balance. And you're right that for the people on the natural holistic side that are like, this is the only way, you should never do the modern medicine, that's not correct either.
No.
But you also can't fall to the other side of like all natural holistic medicine is false and wrong.
It's not, because I'm living proof.
Yeah, exactly.
That it isn't.
Yeah, wow. So, okay, let's get back to your journey here. So it's January of 2020, you get this diagnosis of the tongue cancer. In March, you go through the surgery to remove part of your tongue and rebuild it.
Right.
And then you're clear for a little while. You have some recurrences. In August of 2021 is when it comes back in your lung.
Oh, it went full on wild.
Okay, it was in many places.
Many, yeah.
And that's when you're really faced with the stark reality of, like, I've got to change what I'm doing here. Like, I've got to beat this.
It is go time.
Yeah, okay. You pull out all the stops and you say, this is my life. I'm all in on this. I'm going to conquer this.
Yep.
I love that.
The practitioner that I worked with, I'll never forget it. He's in Arizona.
Okay.
His name is Dan Rubin.
Okay. And
his exact words were, we can do this. He goes, head and neck is my jam. So I said, okay.
And to contrast that, what were mainstream medical doctors telling you at the time about this diagnosis?
Micalyn, bye. Well, this isn't good. I worked with a couple of different practitioners who were great. The ones at Marietta were great. But they were like, well, drug resistance is an issue. You'll be okay for a little while if it works. So we began with 8 weeks of therapy because they didn't think that I could tolerate it.
Wow.
I've tolerated it for 2 years. And worse. And led a normal life.
That's unbelievable. So you had basically mainstream medical doctors giving you a terminal prognosis that this is going to end your life.
Yeah.
You're not going to live. And then you've got so you said an ND, which is different from an MD,
right?
Which is a medical doctor. And then an ND is a doctor of naturopathic medicine. It's still a doctorate degree that you have to go to school for from certified accredited organizations. And, they can get board certified in their own right, I believe. And you've got this doctor telling you, this is my jam. Those are two
my jam.
Those are two very different messages.
Yep.
And that all ties back to what we were saying. The messaging in your brain about yourself is infinitely important, but I think the messaging that you surround yourself with is also very important.
100%.
Because where is the hope when you have a doctor telling you, like, this is terminal, you're going to die.
It becomes from yourself.
Yeah. I mean, they're not giving you any hope in that situation. So, like you say, you've got to find it within.
And they say, well, we'll see how it goes.
So what became your approach? What was your strategy here?
I went with the natural side, supporting the medical side.
I love that.
So that I could we knew that the medical side would work, but in order to support my body, they were like, you have to be able to get through it. And here's how.
Wow. So you basically, your strategy became, I'm going to put my body in such a state of supreme health that it will be able to withstand this kind of brutal therapy that we know will cure it if I can get through it.
Right. And we went through lab testing, blood work, all of that. It wasn't just a witch doctor pulling stuff out of a hat.
Yeah.
It was scientific, methodical, personalized.
That's amazing. And you know here's what I think is really cool about this. They actually do that in some areas of modern medicine, this kind of mindset of, we're going to take an incredibly healthy body and give it this extreme intense form of medical treatment because we know it'll work, we know it'll kill it. And the main area I think of is in pediatrics.
Yes.
In kids, they actually get significantly higher per body weight ratios, relative doses of chemotherapy. They get much higher doses, and they get much more intense drugs than we'll give to a lot of adults. The reason being, because when you're, from age 1 to 18 or whatever it is, you are vibrantly healthy by default, kind of, because your body's growing, it's building at a rate that it never will again. And so medical science has learned that, these kids can withstand a lot more. Pediatric cancers are generally more aggressive. So they say, well, we'll give them a lot more because we know we can kill it. And it's kind of a similar mindset in that if you have vibrant health as the foundation, now these kids kind of have it by default, whereas you were building it within yourself, then you will be able to withstand so much more. I think you could take that mindset, and whether it's cancer or whether it's just day-to-day life,
right?
You have to build health, and not just health, but like a vibrant health as the foundation, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally.
So what kind of approach that I took was like I would with my job. I wanted to put together the best team of people for myself.
I love that.
So I have on my team, I had a local oncologist who's amazing, local team of people. I had a specialist at OSU and University of Chicago.
Okay.
And then I had natural health care, and then I had spiritual care with that.
That's amazing.
Integrative. So to say, well, I did X, Y, Z, it really depends on the person and what they're comfortable with.
Yeah. And one thing I always try to tell people, and I actually just told a very close friend this last night who's, facing kind of a potentially scary situation in this area. But what I think you realized is you're in charge here.
It is you.
You're the boss.
If someone walks up to me, and I do that naturally, and did that. I mean, I worked my way up in that company and ended up as a CEO of North America.
That's amazing.
So, I have that natural drive to do that and the know-how. But for a person who is no clue who to put on my team, I don't know. I mean, call me. I will help them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's how how would the layperson know who to put on their team?
Yeah, and I don't think we would, based on the general messaging we get in day-to-day life.
And taking and seeing an ad on Instagram for an anti-cancer supplement is not the answer.
Yeah.
It is a whole approach.
Yeah. I love your perspective and your mindset there. And I think that, like, your story is so important to capture because you can show people, like, hey, you can take charge of this situation. And not that, there's so many good medical practitioners out there. I do stand by that. Absolutely. But I think we kind of have this mindset in society of like, oh, the doctor's in charge. They know everything. I know nothing. Like, they're in charge. I
didn't know. I read the book, Chris Beat Cancer.
Okay.
I don't follow all of it, but I think he has some great points. But one thing that really rang out in that message was, if I said everything that traditional oncology said, I'd be dead. Wow. And I didn't get that until I went through this and went, oh my God, that is so true. I'm not knocking it. I'm here because of it.
That is the impossible right there.
But it took a team of people, not only that, but taking it one step further. My worst fear happened again.
Yeah. So this all comes back again. But what you're doing now is you're in a position at this point where you're saying, I'm in charge of my health.
Yes.
And that's by default 100% true.
And
no matter who you are and what situation you are in charge of your own health. And yes. We want you don't even have to, like, I always tell the kids we work with, like, you are the world leading expert in you. Nobody will ever know you or understand you better than you understand yourself.
Right.
And that is a big responsibility, but it's also an incredible opportunity.
Yes.
And the thing is like, you don't have to be the expert in cancer. You're the expert in you. And so you were the expert in yourself, and you said, okay, I'm going to construct this team of experts in cancer and vibrant health around me,
right,
so that I can do something impossible here.
Yes.
And I love that so much. And I'm sure you probably pulled part of that from your experience in business, because it's the same way in business. Like, I mean, as I'm setting up clumsily setting up the podcast here, I was telling you, I was like, Austin is the audio engineer expert, and sometimes I struggle to set this up because that is his area of expertise, and he does it so flawlessly. But it's, whenever you build a business, you've got to build a team. You're not going to be the expert in everything.
Right.
You a lot of times have to be a jack of all trades in some way, but you have to know a little bit about everything sometimes. But you bring on a finance expert, you bring on a legal expert, you bring on all these people, because you can't become an expert in everything else.
Right.
And that's exactly what you were doing in your healthcare journey here.
Yes.
So how did things, you get this in August of 2021, you have cancer everywhere. Medical oncology is telling you this is terminal. You're not going to make it through a treatment.
They were like, they never came out and said that.
Okay.
They were like, we're going to see how it goes.
Okay. So they were very hesitant.
Hesitantly optimistic.
Okay. I see. And then you build this team around you, and you say, no, I'm going to take charge here. We're going to figure out a way to get through this, because my only option here is health.
Yes.
And healing. So what does the journey look like from that point then?
Journey from Ben was at chemo once a week.
Okay.
It looks at a very, very, very regimented natural health care regime.
Okay.
And then it looks at kind of the spiritual end.
Okay.
I had to really go where I don't want to. I don't want to go there. 'Cause that was uncomfortable.
Yeah. As much physical pain as there can be in some of these situations, it's wild how the emotional and spiritual pain and trauma, like working through that, can be so much more intense in some ways.
The physical part of it was the easier part.
Yeah.
I show up, I get an infusion, I go home.
Yeah. It's all very tangible. It's like right there in front of you, and it's very orderly, and it's at least you can comprehend it. Even if you don't understand it, you can say, you know, I show up, I get this drug, and I go home and I deal with the side effects.
Right.
But with the spiritual and emotional side, it's not tangible. It's not right in front of you. It's within you, and it, especially if you've not worked through it before, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
Yet you still have to find a path forward.
And why should I have to work on what happened 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Ew.
Oh, man. So you had the medical side, which we kind of talked about. You're doing this weekly chemo. What did your, naturopathic regimen look like, and then what did the spiritual healing look like? What were each of these components?
Yeah, naturopathic was an intense vitamin regime that I still follow.
Okay.
That I've added on to, but it's very methodical.
Okay.
And it was being very, very regimented about my health. I will not skip a treatment. I will not skip a vitamin day. I am doing this. And I was weird about that.
Yeah.
Like, real weird. And I wanted it. Like, I am driven in that way. And then on the spiritual side, I worked with and I'm still working with a whole health practitioner.
Okay.
Who is kind of a meditative vibe with that. So meditation, body work, all of that.
Wow. So you're really attacking it, not attacking. It sounds like you're becoming a professional in your own health.
Yes, that is a perfect way to talk about that.
Yeah, just like a professional NFL athlete, or the Olympics are going on right now, an Olympic athlete is never going to miss a workout. They're never going to miss a meal. They're never going to miss a recovery session.
Right.
They're never going to miss an hour of sleep. Like, you have to be that obsessive about it in order to compete at that level.
Obsessive is a great word.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a bad word.
No.
I feel like it's got a negative connotation to it in our society. Yet you get on Instagram and you scroll through all these reels and it says, become obsessed, you know, and they're just like these people talking about it. So we're exposed to it every day, but there's a lot of truth to it. You have to be obsessed with your goals and your direction and your purpose in life.
And for someone at that level of health, like that, can I say shit on this podcast?
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
So I'm at my oh shit moment, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna do it. We're okay.
Yeah.
But peeling back all of those layers, figured out my team, figured out my regimen. Go time.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
I love that. So how did you work through, because you talk about like this greatest fear of what if it comes back? Was it at this point in some of the spiritual work that you were peeling back some of those layers and learning to operate not from a place of fear, but from a place of hope and opportunity, or did that come later?
Both.
Okay.
So one thing that I was taught was fear isn't real. You make it up. And then a lot of people would say, oh, well, yeah, but my worst fear came true. Not really. I made that happen. So I'm like, all right, okay, self, we are going to really beat this. At that point, every scan starts to improve. I'm like, okay, I've got this. I am on it. And then by May of 22, cancer free.
That's unbelievable. So in August of 21,
major shit show.
Yeah. Just like about the worst case scenario you could be in. And is this at the point where some other parts of your life are kind of going negative, or did that come later?
And no.
Okay.
August of 21 is when the wheels fell off. You know, I have that gut feeling in your mind that something's off. So I had some great advice from friends. And she said, unless you're ready to deal with it, do nothing until you're ready.
Yeah. And
I got my cancer free in May of 22, 2 years ago. And then at that point, I was ready, and went through a divorce, and got that part of my life rearranged.
So you were basically able to, and this is okay. Here's a common thread: a lot of the highest level CEOs and executives in the business world will say, like, by default, we can't multitask. Like, we have to be all in on one thing at a time, and in order to achieve that like highest level. So it sounds like you were kind of saying, all right, I've got this other stuff I know that I have to deal with, but right now my physical health is the highest threat to me.
Right.
So I am going to get my physical health 100% squared away, focus on that, and when I'm ready, I'll come back to the other side of my health, what everything else that's going on.
The health, I think, is affected by the people you surround yourself with.
100%.
And when I went through a whole life cleanup, and in that life cleanup was also my marriage.
Yeah.
And I'm not shy about that. You know, both of us went through that, and it happened the way it happened. But I had to put that on the forefront, and in order to be 100% healthy, I also had to clean up that side of my health.
Yeah, I agree 100%, because if we've been talking about it the whole time, you've got the internal message that is what you tell yourself about yourself, what you allow yourself to believe about yourself. But then there's also an external message that there will always be an external message around you, and you just decide basically what you allow in, and what you have to basically construct the people, the environment, the atmosphere around you in a way that's supporting and in line with your own personal message about yourself. And if something's out of line, then you have to change it somehow, some way, somehow. And that can look different for a lot of different people, depending on what the situation is. But it's like I talked about earlier, so much of who I am now came from the gym and the people I train at, and the people I've been fortunate enough to surround myself with. Is like that situation this morning when I almost fall over I would have fallen over with that weight on my back if those other people were not immediately there around me to catch that. And if I were not operating in that kind of environment, I would be a very hurt person right now.
But they're on your team.
Exactly.
And the person 100%. That, I think your marital health is a big part of your overall environment. And if that isn't part of your team, then you have to really work on that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, because my wife and I are at a very good place in our marriage right now. And like, having Lily has only made things stronger, I feel like. But, you know, we've gone through times of struggle, just like I think any marriage or relationship would, you know, and I think there were some times where I was not the best supportive partner I could be. And I think back to that time a lot of like, when did things change for me? And for me, I realized it was when I started viewing us as a team that's working together toward a common goal,
right.
Not two people that are fighting to get what they want,
right.
you know, and I'm not trying to say she ever did that, but it was that mindset shift for me that really changed things, you know, and I try to look at every situation now as like an opportunity to be a hero for my family. You know, if I come home from work and I had a rough day and I'm like strung out and exhausted, but I come home and see my wife and like has not had a good day with like Lily has been a tough cookie that day, I've got to immediately switch my mindset and say, oh no, I can be the hero here. I can come in and support her in whatever way she needs and be that person for her. And I think you're 100% right. Like, you had not only do you have to have that team approach in your marriage, but I think in everybody you surround yourself with.
Yes. In your friends,
Mm-hmm.
in your work life, in your marriage, in your in your physical health too. It is all connected more than you know.
Wow. So that you can build this congruent external message that's always in line with what your personal message is.
Who are you going to walk into battle with?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so are you at a point now where you feel like you've constructed that team around you?
100%.
That's awesome.
I have personally a very supportive person
Mm-hmm.
with me. I have friends who are so supportive. I have, and have just added to the last piece of the puzzle, medically.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So you really just became the professional in yourself.
Only in since about May.
Okay.
I really was able to find the last piece of the missing health puzzle and really move forward with it.
That's amazing. So in May of 2022, you were 100% cancer free.
Yep.
And then you started working on this journey of, okay, now I'm going to deal with the other sides of my health and the other sides of the people around me and this message and everything that's just going, the more external side.
Right.
I'm going to start dealing with that. Is that kind of the journey you've been on the last couple years? Were there any more cancer recurrences? How did we get from there to, what did the journey look like from there to now?
So the universe sometimes, you know, in this whole journey of life with the universe, you're like, did you really pick up on that? Or do you really not get it?
Mm-hmm.
And last December, the universe was like, you have one more lesson. And I'm like, well, all right, fine.
So this is December of 23 then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very recently.
And had you already kind of gone on the majority of this journey of cleaning everything else up?
I thought I was done. Just when you think you're at the point of you're like, yeah. I have to step back one point further. Our company was bought. And so a year ago, I lost my job. I'm like, oh, come on. So I got through that. Ended up in a wonderful place. Doing what I love. And I feel like I can kind of focus on myself. But then the universe was like, one more. So January, so Christmas Eve of 23. I was at a friend's house, and we had rescheduled this meeting to exchange Christmas presents, I would say 3 times.
Yeah.
Third time was a charm. And I had pulled back off of chemotherapy back in, I think, August, so a year ago. And went with antibody therapy alone.
Okay.
With Herbicide.
Yeah.
Doing really well. But I had this drive. I was like, something's off. I felt like I hadn't truly found the why. Why did I have cancer in my tongue? And why did it spread? Well, found out why. December of 23, I was at a friend's house, and I couldn't talk. All of a sudden, I didn't feel well, and I couldn't talk. And I was trying to motion him. He was a physician, and was like, I can't talk. So he did the stroke test, passed that, but I couldn't talk. Turned out, I had a brain tumor. And people are like, okay, well, natural health care didn't work, and pulling back on chemo didn't work, the doctors were right. Never not. It was there all along. So it wasn't new, it wasn't a recurrence, it was just allowed to proliferate without the chemotherapy.
So in some ways, that pulling off of chemotherapy actually helped expose this like core piece. Like this was the core piece that was driving everything else. It was probably
there when my tongue first started.
Wow.
So I went to OSU. That was a bit of an emergency, and found out that I had 2 tumors. I was part of a clinical trial. They did radiotherapy, so gamma knife.
Okay. Oh my gosh, that's a very new technology too. Yeah.
Sure was. And then I had brain surgery by the best team.
You had brains? When was this?
I had a craniotomy the same day that I had gamma knife.
Oh my gosh.
So I had 27 staples down the back of my head. And they found out that I had not 1 but 2 tumors on top of each other.
Oh my gosh.
So they removed all of that. And here I am.
So this was December of 23 when you first have this, like,
yeah.
I can't talk, something's wrong. When was the turnaround to the surgery and the gamma knife?
I had a local procedure done, and then that wasn't effective. I had a seizure.
Okay.
And then that was probably, I think I was in the hospital for a week or 2 to turn that around.
Wow. And was this in December as well, or was there
mid-January?
Mid-January. So, like, less than 6 months ago, you had brain surgery.
Yeah.
And I had no clue.
Yeah. That's a big one.
Guys, this is the kind of potential that's available to every single one of us. It's putting yourself in a position where you don't accept limitations into your life. This journey is not going to be easy by any means. There's going to be so many challenges, so many hardships, so many things to work through and overcome along the way. But if you allow yourself to be in a position where you start changing that messaging in your brain and around you, that you will succeed in whatever it is you're chasing. This is the kind of potential that's available to you. Micalyn had brain surgery to remove 2 tumors in her brain 6 months ago, less than. And now she's sitting here on the podcast. Now I've known you like as a, coming in the center to get treatment for years and years and years now. I started working in cancer for Memorial in 2020, about the time that you had this second diagnosis. And so I've kind of seen your journey from the other side for a long time. I've only very recently had the honor and opportunity to, kind of become friends with you and meet you through Leanne and all of these things. And that's just in the last few months. I had no idea you had brain surgery. Yeah. And yet here you are on the podcast telling your story, and you're still working as a marketing professional.
Yeah.
And like through all of this, you're living with such like profound abundance in every area of your life.
And I am so grateful. I think people look at my life and what all happens and they say, oh my gosh, how have you done this? How have you done that? But I look at my friends. I look at the people that I have met through this journey, and I am beyond grateful. Like the people that I have met at Strecker, unbelievable group of people that I would not have had in my life without that. But finally, in May, I had a conversation with my naturopath.
Okay.
And I went out to Arizona early December. Didn't know it, but I had a brain tumor.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I just don't feel that great. Something's off. And I want to know why this happened. A lot of people point to HPV. I am not HPV positive.
Okay.
So genetically, they're like, oh, you have some mutation, but we don't know why. I'm like, well, I don't accept that.
Yeah.
And so I spoke with him. I also met a local practitioner who the universe kind of forced me with. And so I have someone local doing this. And what my naturopath and what the local practitioner said is my body went through a tipping point.
Okay.
4 years ago and became too toxic.
Okay.
So there are a couple ways that can happen. Exposure to mold, exposure to environmental toxin, even like a parasite that you pick up in your yard, basically non-detectable, or something like diet, but you put all of those together and your body becomes to a point where it cannot tolerate it.
And not to mention all the chemotherapy and radiation, which even though they're therapies, they're also toxins in and of themselves.
Yeah, right. So that is probably what caused the recurrence of cancer in the first place. Wow. My body hit a tipping point. The oral mucosa in my mouth was disrupted by something. And if you look at the route that traveled, tongue, lung, hip, bone, brain, that is not a typical route of travel. Mm-hmm. So we went through a bunch of testing, and I'm going through a very intense process to clean up the last part of this puzzle, and that is my body.
That's amazing. So now you've been able to rid your body of that and basically not like kind of like reset.
It will take about a year.
Okay.
It is not a fast way.
Okay. So basically they're saying this is what you learned in May, that they're like, okay, this was just a culmination of everything around you.
Right.
Environmental, physical, just like everything. And your body hit a tipping point where it just could not regulate properly anymore, which that tipping point could look different for everybody. I mean, You hear about the people who smoke cigarettes till they're 102, but now you're in a position where you can say, okay, let's get back to that vibrant health.
Oh, we're in vibrant health already. But we're going to become even more vibrant.
Okay.
And with that, you peel back the final layers.
Mm-hmm.
You look at environmental. That is the point that I'm in now, like biotoxin. You look at other causes. Genetically, we look at that. And it turns out that I have a gene that won't let my body rid itself of toxin.
Okay.
So I have built up all of that. My body won't rid itself of it, and I have to go through that process to eliminate that. And that is a very careful, scientific process.
Wow.
You can't just go, oh, I'm going to go on Instagram and get a detox. No.
Yeah.
It is very, very, very methodical.
Wow. So basically, because we all have detox systems in our body,
Sure,
driven mostly by your liver and your kidneys, as well as many other things, but those are the two primary driving organs, and they're designed there to do just that, because there are toxins around you in every day-to-day life. Even some of the food we eat, like there's natural toxins that like in honey, there's like botulinum toxin, and that's why babies can't eat honey, and that's a very well-known thing that but as you get older, your body develops the ability to fight that and rid that and actually use it as an adaptive advantage. There's this whole side of not just medicine but biology called, I think it's hormesis is what it's called, where you can take like things like oxalates in vegetables and botulinum toxins in honey, things that are naturally occurring. Your body recognizes them and says, oh, that can't be there, and fights it off, and actually builds you up a better resistance and tolerability to that. So basically your body has a genetic deficiency that doesn't allow you to do that optimally.
Yes.
So you were probably hyper susceptible to a lot of these things that most people's bodies would just rid themselves of naturally.
If you look at two people, why do two people exposed to the same thing, not like one of them gets sick and one doesn't? That's why.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're on this kind of intense, methodical, would you call it like a detox protocol?
Yes.
Now then, okay.
Yeah.
What does, I guess, just to give our listeners an idea, what does like a day in the life of that look like?
More supplements.
Okay. There's always more supplements, man.
There's always more supplements, but there's many, many ways to do it. You have to find the right agent, the right pathway, the right way to do it based on your own body. And mine happens to be being used by a practitioner that I was already working with.
That's amazing.
So it really ended up working out well.
And so it's like, in a way, you could look back and say that because if you hadn't addressed this final root cause, likely you may have continued to have problems.
Absolutely.
Even though you got your mindset straight, you got your physical health supported. So in a way, it's like you having had cancer again helped you get connected with this doctor that now can support this final step.
Yes. And I have someone on top of that, a specialist out of California, supporting even that. So because this is such an odd case, I mean, it truly is a team of people.
Wow. That's incredible. And I think your whole journey to where you are now and your whole mindset now is just a testament to what we keep coming back to. It's this idea of our own inherent human potential.
Yes.
And this can be applied, because I know most people listening to this have not had cancer. Some of them may never have cancer. It's not just about cancer, guys. You can apply this to any aspect of your life, whether it's training, whether it's physical health, whether it's business, whether it's your family life.
And you can't put yourself in a scenario and say, oh, well, if I want to perform at my optimum, I'm not going to worry about my diet.
Yeah.
It's okay to drink a little bit of alcohol, once in a while. But you have to know what your limit is and what your body tolerates and how you surround yourself. Because if you surround yourself with all of those toxic agents, you won't be successful.
Wow. And that's going to look different for everybody too. 100%. Because we're all totally unique in our biochemistry and our physiology. So this is something, I don't ask all of our guests this, but I ask our guests that I think like have this level of a powerful message and mindset and approach to their journey. Going back to, so we subscribe to the philosophy that the meaning of life is becoming who you needed in your darkest hour and giving that to the world.
Right.
Going back to what you've had a whole journey, going back to whatever, and you don't even have to tell us what it is, but go back to like what you would consider your darkest hour in all of this journey, the point where you were at your lowest, that you were struggling the most. What advice, what would you tell that person as who you are today?
Oh, you're going to make me, like, I had a feeling pop up there for a second. I would say it's love.
Yeah.
It all comes down to that.
Love for yourself.
Yep.
And for those around you.
Uh-huh. I had a feeling like twice. Yeah. Quit that. Why would you ask me that?
Well, it's an intense question, but we always get the best. We get some of the most powerful moments from it.
I had to take my glasses off for that one.
Yeah, because I think it's sometimes hard to think about, and this is something that I've come back to enough now because we asked this to a decent number of our guests, and then you think back to your own life, and it is what we would call an impossible experience to go back and think about that person in that moment. I would urge everybody listening, do this in your own life. Even if you feel like you're not in a good spot right now, do this in your own life. Make it like a regular habit you come back to. Think about where you were at what you would consider your lowest in life. And realize that person had no inkling of an idea of who you were going to become. And then take a moment to recognize who you are now. And then our approach becomes, I am going to live at the highest level for that person.
Yes. And unless you love who you are, you can't do it.
Yeah. And Natalie, actually, the mom of Leo we talked about earlier, she took it one step further than we had even been able to take it. And she said, like you said, she said, love that person.
Yes.
Love that person, give them grace, and say, I'm living this life for you.
Yes.
Because
absolutely.
You needed this more than anything else. And I'm going to do that in honor of you.
Right.
And then you can take that practice and that process and make it an external reflection, and you can do it for other people in the same situation.
Yeah.
And I know you're doing that already now in your own life with the people around you.
It is a process.
Yeah.
You don't wake up one day like, oh, I'm going to love myself. No. It is absolutely a process that will only improve.
Yeah. And what's so great about this process is it allows you to build a purpose and meaning in your life. And we always talk about, we love to think of it as not so much finding your purpose, but creating it.
Right.
Because you can create purpose to anything, just like the fact that you got aligned with this naturopathic doctor way back when you were trying to battle cancer, that now is allowing you to, use this, find this final puzzle piece in your life that you may not have gotten aligned with them in any other way.
Oh, and that was through a friend.
Yeah.
Who I have referred so many people to speak with her.
Yeah.
Even.
And so it's literally creating purpose to having had cancer again, you know, and you can do that for any aspect of your life. But when you create that person that you needed most in that darkest hour, I believe that is your highest level, because you were going to by default be most intimate with that specific pain in that specific situation. So when you create the person who you needed in that situation, it is going to be the most powerful, the highest level version of yourself.
Right.
And when you can give that to someone else who's in a similar situation, like when, you know, when I see Leo cross the finish line, I see that light go on. Like that is life right there. And then you talk about love, which is actually something we've not really talked on the podcast before. Like, you know, it comes up here and there, but and I'm sure we've kind of through, you know, alternative routes kind of talked about it indirectly, but we've not directly talked about love on the podcast. And what's interesting, the fact you bring this up now is, and everybody says it, like when you have a child, like you learn a whole new type of love. When, and this started happening even before she was born. When I look at my daughter, we just had a little over a month ago, every single time when I look at her, and whenever I feed her, so every morning we get up and I grab her and I'll feed her 1 or 2 times before I leave. And like when we have those moments when I'm feeding her, she will stare directly in my eyes and I'll stare directly in her eyes. And it's like that emotional connection is greater than anything I have in my life right now. And it's like a level of love. And it's not just that I love her because I'm her dad. Obviously there's a biological component there, but it's so much deeper than that. The person I was 10 years ago would not have been capable of loving her in the way I'm capable of loving her now. And it's because I've been fortunate enough to get on the right path and get aligned with the right people to build myself into the person I am now, the person I needed at my darkest hour. And I can now take all of that growth and that journey that I've been on and say, I'm a person who can live for her.
That's awesome.
And I would be interested to know, like, when you say love, what do you define love as?
I think it is. That's a hard question.
It is a hard question.
What is it?
But you're a powerful person who I think will have a good answer for it.
But I think it is finding out the type of love. If you've read the book about the types of love, the love of the self, love of a child, love of a friend, but it all, and so on, but it all boils down to the love of yourself. Knowing that it is okay to be that person.
Yeah.
You know, you are who you are.
Yeah. And I guess taking that into consideration, you could say love is a skill.
It is.
Maybe the highest skill.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Because I know that I could not have loved my daughter the way I do now if I'd have had her in 2014. And that's scary for me to say, but I was not okay myself back then. So would you say that building yourself into the person that you've created now, this vibrantly healthy person that has constructed every area of life in your life around this message that you have for yourself and for others, would you say that has helped you love more deeply than you ever have before?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Like, I think with not only passion, but realizing what is important.
Wow.
It is about people experience and not base.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, Micalyn, I can't tell you how honored we are to have had you on this show.
Oh, I appreciate it.
And your story, your journey, but not only that, your perspective and your message is going to be so powerful and so helpful to so many people. And that's really the core of what we hope to achieve in every way. We read what I read at the beginning there of the podcast is our company's mission statement, and what I read at the end of every podcast is our vision statement, and it's all centered around bringing these messages and these perspectives to people to help them facilitate this growth and this change in their own lives. So I got one final question, and that would be for somebody out there now, because we have a lot of different people in a lot of different stages of life listening to this. For somebody out there now who's maybe facing a new cancer diagnosis, or for somebody who's battling something that may not even be cancer, that they just want to shove it under the rug and they want it to go away and they want it to be normal, what would be the first step you would tell them? Here's how you can take the first step towards healing.
Figure out who you want on that team.
Yeah.
And it is about yourself.
Yeah.
And the root of that, we all think about the illness, but it all becomes with yourself.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And I feel like I say this almost every episode, but it's because we're honored to have so many amazing, incredible, impossible people on this show that this is, truly one of the most powerful episodes we've ever done. And guys, we've talked about it a lot today, but it's that message. What you tell yourself about yourself is so important, and it's something you have the power to change starting right now. It's not going to happen immediately overnight. It's not going to happen in a day's time, but it's something that you can work towards and take one step forward along that journey today, right now. You have to open yourself up to an unruly belief in your own potential. And when you accept that and allow yourself to believe that, then the work doesn't necessarily become easy, but it becomes one of the most positive, motivating, essential pieces of your life. And you will be amazed time and again where you can go with that kind of belief. And like Micalyn has taught us today, I would take that same unruly word and apply it to what she said and said to love. Have an unruly love for yourself. Have an unruly love for the people around you. Have an unruly love and passion for your own health and your own healing journey, whatever that looks like for you right now. Take that and give that to yourself so you can build the highest form of yourself, and then give that to others who are on the same journey, who need it most. And it's just such an honor to be a part of and learn from people like you and like Leanne and like Ginger and these people who have just changed our lives in so many ways and give us a whole new perspective on our own message. That's the thing I love most about what we do here, is it's like now I feel like I have a whole new perspective and understanding of the message we already say here every episode that I didn't even know before. And I love that every single time it happens, every single time it comes up. So guys, as we always ask, the number one thing we ask for you to do is, if you know somebody in your life who you think this episode could help, please share it with them. Because at the end of the day, that is the core of everything we're trying to do, is we're trying to help people by sharing these messages of others who have overcome these challenges and worked through the difficulties and what they can face in life, and people who have faced the impossible, who can now be impossible with their goals, with their dreams, with their passion, with their ambitions, everything they're chasing in life. they can have an impossible approach to it, and recognizing that they are impossible themselves. They, by all understanding and knowledge and comprehension, should not be able to be who they are. Yet here they are. Here Micalyn sits in front of us, not just living, but thriving in life. And we believe that is the highest purpose anybody could chase. So guys, please share this episode with someone you know who is battling their own challenges in life, if you believe that it could help them. And as always, if you ever want to learn more about what we're doing, our message, and what we're chasing in life, you can find us at www.impossibleperformance.com. You can contact us there through email, and Austin or I will respond to you directly and help you in any way we can. And you can hear more of our message in different formats through our YouTube channel at Impossible Performance. We have full-length video of all of our episodes uploaded there. If you'd like to see and put a face to the name of Micalyn and all the other incredible, impossible people that we're honored to have on this show. We're also on Instagram at impossible.performance. Austin is at Austin_strength. Our podcast page is at Welcome to the Impossible, how we start every single episode. And we're on TikTok at impossible.performance, as well as all of the other social media channels. We like to have a pretty dedicated approach to this message because we feel like it is the core of everything we do. So we try to send it to every channel that we possibly can. But outside of that, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you, Micalyn, for being here. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before we leave today?
I feel like it was even sitting here with you in this room is an honor. So no. I appreciate it.
The honor is all mine. I promise you that, because I've learned so much today and grown in so many ways. And it's never ceases to amaze me how just sitting down for, actually it's been 2.5 hours now. It flies by. It always does. But just sitting down and talking like this in such a real, like, honest kind of face-to-face way, it allows you to develop such a deep connection with another person that you would maybe never have had before, didn't even realize that you could develop a connection that quickly. And we feel that with all of our guests. And it just gives us such a profound respect and perspective on your journey and your message and everything you've gone through. So really the honor is 100% ours.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Yeah. So guys, as always, we appreciate everything you do for us, and always for your support and your continuation of helping us spread this message, because like I say, at the end of the day, that's everything we're trying to do. Austin and I know what this message has done for our own lives, and we want to use it to help other people in their lives, because at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you for listening, and as always, be impossible.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that.
You're amazing. That's unbelievable. I always leave these episodes feeling like